Welcome everyone. Today we have our another new episode and we have our world famous speaker. We will discuss on longevity. We have Mr. Marshall, Mr. Mark Sabin, Professor David Smith, Professor Ching, and Mr. Oleg. So if you open your camera and unmute your audio, then it will be helpful for us. First, I want to give chance, Mr. Marshall.
Well, thank you, Sharif. And today's topic, longevity, is an absolute important topic for people around the world, especially when we think about longevity. People think of the term that is sometimes used as a synonym for life expectancy in demography. However, the term longevity sometimes is meant to refer to only especially long-lived members of our population, people who are typically, as is stated in the ancient terms, may live until 120, as an old expression. There are a few people out there that have met that criteria in reality. There's a lot of myths about longevity, and I'm sure we'll cover some of those topics today. But in my opening remarks, I just want to say that may you, as Spock used to say in Star Wars, may you long live and prosper. So I'll leave it at that for the moment and let the others speak.
Thank you, Mr. Mark Sabin.
Thank you, Sharif. Yeah, so longevity is certainly an issue that we all face. I think most everybody that is living today would like to be able to live a long and fruitful life, and as Marshall said, live long and prosper. One of the things that I've done over my years of living has been pursued different pursuits, different aspects of what it means to have a long life. And part of that is not just about the length of years that you have, but having the life in the years that you live. And so in my opening remarks, I think that's one of the key things that we have to do. And one of those things are the basic fundamentals that we have. Are being able to eat, to breathe, to sleep, to drink water, and to exercise. And there are a variety of different formats of all these things that can be used to help people. And these are part of what we need to be able to support as the world is going through the process of developing new solutions for the climate problems that we're facing, because that's going to impact everyone's longevity.
Mhm. Thank you, Professor David Smith. I know you have a very good presentation for our audience. So, yes, you can share with our audience.
Well, Sharif, thank you very much. Longevity is a topic that really directly affects all of us, because we all want to live longer and be more productive while we're living. The longevity marketplace, though, is actually a quite large one. And it is projected that by 2028, that the longevity marketplace is a $183 billion marketplace with a compound annual growth rate of over 22.2%. And it's really being driven by growing household income in developed and in developing nations, the acceptance of a wide range of both traditional, herbal, and alternative medicine, and increasingly age-related diseases have had successful treatments come into place, and being able to have it work in a way that has, in many ways, minimized the impacts of some of these age-related diseases. The chart that's up is kind of a very interesting one to me. And if kind of on the left, where you see the Pentagons, where they're mostly light blue, those are places where work was being done in 2019 and before on longevity. And over on the right hand side, many of those boxes have now turned blue, darker blue, and saying that those have been solved, that progress has been made there. And that you're seeing now, instead of being a fairly flat system, we now have many layers which go back as we look at how to address longevity. And many years, the last 3 years, longevity globally has actually declined a couple of years. But what we're seeing now as we get over the hardest effects of the pandemic, it's expected that longevity will pick back up and that it will life expectancy begin to go out and extend again. And what you see there is today in developed countries, the life expectancy is 80 to 90 years. But in developing countries, the life expectancy is between 32 to 77 years today. And so a big range there, but there is still a difference between developing countries and developed countries as you look at longevity and how it's going to impact the citizens. Um, the other trend that is very interesting with longevity is as people are aging, most of the people aging are not letting it slow us down. We're going out, we're spending more time with friends, we're going out to clubs, we're going out to networking events, and we're keeping busier. We're exercising later and later into our lives that increase our quality of life, increase our life expectancy as well. And so these are all trends from both the the scientific side as well as the cultural side that are all impacting longevity industries. So, Sharif, I think that's my opening remarks.
Thank you. Professor Ching.
Yeah, okay. I would say, honestly, I'm trying to to deal with. I solve some problems, okay, in value, in complete automation. I try to deal with social science. I try to deal with life science. I find it very difficult. So, let's not talk about social science. That's a very, very long story. And talk about life science, which I'm engaging in after I extend my parents' life. My mother by 10 years, and my father by 2 years. Okay, I started looking into this problem of how people die, how to keep them alive. Okay, I extend their life by 10 years. So since then I start to look into how to maintain a life so that it will not deteriorate. And in the last uh, about 14 years, at least 14 years, actually 20 years, I reduced my biological age by 28 years. Okay, measured by glycan age. Glycan is a protective coating on cells. Okay, it serves both as an energy source and also as a protective wall. Therefore, it's related to everything. Okay, because I realize that inflammation is the key to all the problems of old age. Okay, Alzheimer is caused by some inflammation, for example, from your appendix. If your appendix hasn't been taken out, you have large chance of getting Alzheimer. Okay, also, old people, like Marshall is an excellent example of a very healthy older person. Okay, sorry to say, he's a very healthy person, at the senior age, you see. So basically, David too, David is energetic. You know, the difference is they have less inflammation. Okay, so inflammation causes people to hunch up. Old people to hunch up, couldn't move. They got all kind of complaint, chronic disease. You see, so getting rid of inflammation. So before COVID, I had no inflammation. Every week I dance and I feel I'm getting younger. So I shave off 28 years. Okay. But COVID came and gave me a new experience. It started to cause some problem in my health. You see. In other words, one need to be perfectly healthy before one can reduce one's age. Okay, to be perfectly healthy is to get rid of all the inflammation. Okay, so because I have so much struggle with life scientist, being a theoretical physicist, background. I'm a philosopher, in the mathematics training. I formally trained in mathematics and the philosophy. Actually, my PhD degree is in nuclear plasma physics. So my I'm a very technical person. Okay, and the life science, they're also very technical. They got all kind of terminology. If you want to get into it, you have to learn all the practical and new language. You see, so I formulated the logical life science based on similar to computer science based on logic. Instead, today's life science is based on science, and the science is based on experimentation. In other words, I want logic, not experimentation. And because I'm the founder of pole science, I see that there should be a relationship. You see, you input certain things, then come out the output. The output should be such a thing as your biological age. Okay, what are the inputs? Okay, you need to get all the inputs. The inputs are the experimental data. You see, so they are just getting the input. Nobody can give an output. So I cannot see a person living, with some kind of longevity system which carry his life on and on. I don't see any practical things, but they do lots of research. Okay, and they do research based on experimentation, not based on logic. Okay, so here I'm doing a research on, the title of the research is DOMS. DOMS means the delayed onset of muscle soreness, coordinated by autonomic nervous system with sympathetic nervous system, parasympathetic nervous system, sympathetically maintain the pain, and the DNA kinetics for sustainable rejuvenation. Okay, so I'm getting into all this technical stuff, you see, but I focus on one thing. That is to create the DOMS. DOM is created by intensive exercise, short-term, intermittent, intensive exercise. After you exercise, 3 days later after you exercise, your body tell you to rest. Okay, when you rest, the body start to cure itself. Another it takes 3 days to get all the stuff together, and just like a building highway reconstruction, they have to get prepared to do it, and they have to get all of us, they have to take up a few lands. In other words, you have to rest. Then this thing, every time after DOMS, I feel I'm rejuvenated. Okay, this DOMS, what DOMS does is it sort of create additional stem cell. Okay, there's some kind of animal called moon jellyfish. What it does is the moon jellyfish rejuvenate itself periodically by stem cells. Okay, human being can do the same, but not as well as moon jellyfish. So with this dome, I'm imitating this moon jellyfish, try to find the source of the stem cell generation. Okay, in your muscle, there's satellite cells, satellite stem cells. The amount of satellite stem cells depend on your lifestyle. Okay, depend on what you do. Okay, there's a response to exercise. So I'm sort of focused into this, and that's I can sort of read you my proposal. It's so technical. I don't know how many of people here who are into life science. I've been working on this for many. I've been looking at it for many decades, and I'm working on it directly for the last several years. Okay, so that's my opening remark. Okay,
Thank you. Mr. Ole, can you hear me? Okay, I want to give chance, Mr. Marshall. Actually, you are climate change activist. So how actually climate change affect in longevity? and how, like, if we improve the climate change present situation, how it helps the human lives.
Well, Sharif, that's an excellent question. The climate change report that just came out at the end of the month, at the end of this month, or actually the beginning of this month, in April, gave us some stark information about the climate and what's happening to it. But it did give us some hope. We have a narrow window in which to turn things around. And of course, as Mark and David and Professor Ching have also talked about, health is obviously the key to longevity, but also state of mind is as well. And I think state of mind affects our approach to dealing with the climate crisis. We do have a crisis on our hands, and it can be mitigated, not totally, unfortunately, but it can be mitigated, and we can save lives and also help people live longer in where they are. An example of this, and I just want to give an example that ties into both the climate crisis and addressing it, and also health. There is a supplement, or actually an herb called the moringa tree. The moringa tree comes from the term drumstick in the language in Africa or India, I believe. And the moringa tree has pods out of it and seeds, and these seeds are usually turned into tea. And one would think, well, what does that have to do with the climate crisis? Well, the interesting thing is the moringa seeds have also been used to clean up water as a filtration media, but also to improve soil health, which has to do with the climate crisis, because the more carbon we sequester in the soil and take out of the air, the better it is for the climate crisis. In addition to that, the moringa tree is easy to reproduce anywhere in the world, and we would like to see that become a part of the process. It's heavily grown in India, which I know the World Talent Economy Forum is focused on India. So that would be a great opportunity for the people in India, and as well as all our supporters in the World Talent Economy Forum, to pursue that process. And it has some really, the seeds have shown that it has what's called a super nutrient and phytonutrients in it that allow people to withstand disease and improve their immune systems. And we're going to need more immunity improvement, as we saw with the pandemic recently, because the pandemic is essentially a long-term it's a short-term event, but it's a long-term outcome of the climate crisis, because the pandemic is what's known as a zoonotic disease. That's a disease that transmits between species, and that came about because of the climate crisis. And the climate is not weather per se, but it affects weather, and it affects soil, it affects air, it affects water. So, Sharif, I think the answer to your question is that they're tied distinctly together. We don't live in a discrete world. We have connections between things such as the moringa seed and other plants that are natural capabilities to help reduce climate crisis issues in many ways. And we know that some of the waste from the moringa seeds, that when they're processed, can be actually turned into a material known as biochar. And biochar, it's biochar because it's biological. And that char has high porosity and can do a lot of things to solve a lot of problems, especially in the developing world, where water is scarce sometimes, such as in India, or there's a lot of pathogens affecting people. And we can use these types of products and these types of approach to reduce the climate crisis and at the same time improve the quality of life of people. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Marsabi. Yeah.
Well, in light of all the things that we're talking about here, and I think what Professor Ching is talking about, having done a lot of work in life sciences and in the physics and in what's going on biologically and epidemiologically with people's health, one of the pursuits that I have done over the last number of years, and actually hail from the same San Francisco Bay Area where Professor Ching is, was a longtime student of Tai Chi Chuan, the Chinese martial art, which is very much tied into the idea of longevity. It's actually probably in its principal idea is about being able to improve longevity. And what that has to do with the proper movements of the energy, the unimpeded energy to go through the natural processes. And when you talk about what's happening in terms of globally, it is the macrocosm of a similar sort of microcosm that we have in the human body. So if we're talking about an individual being able to have a long life, a long, healthy life, there are a lot of things that go into, a lot of components that go into that to be able to prevent the kinds of deterioration that we suffer from aging. A lot of times that has to do with the nutritions that we have and the fact that we may be either undernourished or, as we see a lot in the developing world, where a lot of the foods that are going into people are actually have a toxic effect on people's health. So the vast amounts of sugars and fats and processed foods are creating a lot of different problems. And we have the dual obligation that we have because we need to be able to feed the people of the world. There's still a lot of starvation that's happening in the developing world, and certainly with what's happening today in Ukraine and the fact that the crops are likely not to be planted because of the war that's ongoing there is going to impact what's happening nutritionally around the world. So we need to be able to address a multitude of factors when we talk about longevity, because there is the side that each of us has a responsibility for our own particular health and well-being, but we also have an obligation globally to be able to support what's happening now in terms of being able to bring solutions into the world. Some of the things that Marshall was presenting there, like supporting the plant lives, like the moringa plants that can offer the nutritional balance, like there are a number of things that we have a lot of algae problems, but there are beneficial uses of some of the algae if they can be harvested and instead of toxifying the water can actually be used in other ways to actually provide nutrition. So there are a lot of different ways that are going to require the ingenuity and the capability of a lot of the people that are part of the World Talent Economy Forum and who are participating here, either as speakers or the people who are in the audience here, that we need to be able to bring a greater sense of education to the people so that we can actually implement the solutions that we are all talking about here.
Thank you, Professor David Smith. You have very interesting view about longevity, and like for this longevity, I believe that we have to create more awareness. So, if we give chance that you can create the awareness program, so how do you want to do that?
Well, Sharif, I really believe that as you look at the whole area around longevity, it's the ecosystem that is going to become important. We've heard from Dr. Ching and from Mark and Marshall that there's a wide variety of places you have to touch to be successful as you look at longevity. And it goes well beyond science. It goes well beyond culture, and it really also goes to your personal mindset and what you're trying to do with your personal mindset in longevity. There's things we can choose to do and not to do. The actual ecosystem for longevity is a little bit more complex because you have different types of health tech around it, like nanotechnology, AI-based wearables, robotics. You have agriculture tech. You have the whole wellness and prevention industry. And life science is beginning to spend more and more money inside of longevity ecosystem. For example, focusing on the underlying biological causes of aging, beginning to look at how do you treat the cellular diseases and the cellular aging, and really then going to how do you reverse the age-related damage that's there. Regenerative medicine is really making great gains today. Um, because I've had problems with one of my retinas with a detachment and then a tear, I keep up with the regenerative medicine, particularly around retinas, very acutely. And I think I'm at the point in the next year or two where there will be uh, retinas that can be regenerated and implanted to replace my damaged retina. So you'll see that type of regenerative healthcare really beginning to uh, come up into place. The other element where we're still working on it is the government policy and regulation. And that is what's lagging behind in longevity research and longevity medicine and in the whole ecosystem. Um, there are real solid reasons for each of us to push it. There's a lot of money to be made in it. The United Nations, though, in a study that they did several years ago, really came back and said that, and by the end of this century, they expect to see average life expectancy in the low 100s, 106, 110. So just following what the United Nations is projecting there, it's increasing. I've read other scientific studies from, for example, NIH, where if you just take regenerative healthcare, personalized medicine, our understandings of genomics, our understandings of uh, the impact of food, the impact of exercise, they are projecting that by that same time frame, life expectancy might be around 150 years. And the governmental and societal impacts of that are very large. I mean, if I were to live to 150 years, how many careers will I go through? How does that change what we want to do with how we support our older citizens? It changes the whole notion of retirement. Can I retire and still have that same period of time ahead of me in retirement? Uh, all those things are changes that we begin to see there. And so it's a complex issue and it's a complex ecosystem. Some of the newest brain-based studies in looking at aging shows that with some CRISPR modifications, part of the neurological decline can be reversed by just altering a couple of the DNA strands. So again, a lot happening in there and a lot more, but it is a very, very dynamic ecosystem that's going on that has impacts far outside of our individual life expectancy.
Thank you, Professor Ching. How your
Yes,
dance can help for
okay,
longevity, I think. Yes, thank you, Professor Talib, for joining today's session.
yeah,
Thank you.
okay. Okay, well,
Thank you,
let's
sir.
talk about this. This question is very important. Environment impact on longevity. Okay, so I have divided this, age in different way. There's age of brain, age of heart. Okay, age of heart is most important because 20% of people die from heart disease. Okay, heart is related. Its most highest priority is the heart age. Okay, heart is related to breathing. Okay, all the people with long life, they have to live in a perfectly clean air place. Okay, like me. Okay, I live in a place, enclosed by a river and the mountain hills in the on the back side. River in the front side take out all the pollution. So I would tell people who are interested in his own longevity, he need to find the best air, cleanest air. Not in China. Okay, in the best place in the U.S. The two best places, one is in the mountain of Taiwan, the other is in Norway. They have air, so clean that they package them for sale, can them for sale. Where also I'm said in my previous remark, I'm more interested in personal things. There's a big struggle between love and hate. Okay, I'm trying to create happiness. Okay, for the people in the Bay Area. Okay, after COVID, the people just everyone is so sad. Okay, all this gunfight, all this gang violence, they're all caused by hatred. Okay, we are the only people produce happiness. In my student and I, we go in and we try to make people everybody happy. Mark can join us. You know, in the San Bay Area, the two club I go, three clubs I go to all the time is the one is the patio in Palo Alto, and also Westwood and the temple in San Francisco. You can go there. You go to Westwood, you see there's a paradise for young people. But we just had a hell in Sacramento. You see, San Francisco is the city, more people move out. And the Sacramento is the city most people move in. And they had the gang violence, killed 6 people, injured 15. Okay, this is just terrible. There's so much hatred in society today. We need to this longevity basically founded on happiness. You find something happy for you to do, and you continue to do it. And if you like to do it and it's good for your biological age, and that is the cycle you have to catch and to do it. So basically I have outlined this 5 type of age: heart age, brain age, stamina age, immunity age, and lung age. Lung age is the last one, but it's related to the heart. Okay, there are people who come out say you have to learn to breathe. Okay, that's extremely important. You can count. Every time you breathe in and out, you heart beat 4 times. If you be breathing slower, you would be able to slow down your heartbeat. You're breathing faster, you speed up your heartbeat. That's good. Heartbeat going faster and going slower, both good. You see, you need to practice this. So it's really again the heart age is the most important. It relates to breathing age. So usually people die naturally. Their stamina age is gone. So in order to build up your stamina age, you have to have an epigenetic lifestyle. So you have to exercise a great deal or move, be active a lot. That is one of the key things for people who live very long. They are very active. So they build up their stamina, they build up their cycles, all this pathway for creating ATP. There are many ways, and you got to keep that thing going, and in order to have very low stamina age. And I had a very low immunity age measured by glycan. And the glycan, once you have immunity, you take care of all your inflammation, and that gives you a chance to do other things, to improve yourself on other ways. And also that people in the lifestyle, they talk about gene. They think that a human body can change by gene, epigenetics, and I will also add evolution and mutation. You see, with this virus going on, you see. And all this cannot be studied by just doing experiment. I just think you keep experimenting. For example, I will make a statement. Drug test can never be conclusive. Okay, because DNA is designed to live permanently to infinity. In order to be conclusive in drug tests experimentally, you have to wait until infinity. You see, it's not the experimental science. Life science is not the experimental science. It is a logical science, just like computer science. You design the life you want. Okay, this is, there is a big experimentation, because also it cannot be experiment verified. You take some drug, it may be good for you right away, or for even for your lifetime. But how about your children, your children's children? Okay. So this kind of very simple logic, and the people are not following. Also, I want to make this statement again in public too, starting to be in public. I submit papers to Nature journal, and they initially they couldn't tell what I was saying. Okay. Lately they say, oh, what you're saying seems to be interesting, but it will probably be interested by other journals. What I proposed was I say we need a theoretical foundation of life science, because DNA is 0123. It's a computer code. Okay, we need to document and program this code. Once anybody who can program DNA is a creator, you can create life. We don't know how to do it, but we need to get a solid foundation for life science, theoretical foundation for life science. Okay, so this is they're rejecting this, and my feeling is until we have a solid theoretical foundation, we cannot trust, unless we have enough logic put into life science, we cannot trust anything that the medical profession, the life science profession can tell us. Basically, I live my epigenetic lifestyle without much help from the life scientist. So what Marshall said, about nature and all this is what I would say that's more helpful than all this experimentation. Try to keep a worm living longer, keeping a jellyfish, moon jellyfish live permanently. That is good. Okay, that is good. It's not, something that goes on permanently, we shall follow. And what this experimental says, actually, I'm coining a term, anti-epigenetics, epigenetic lifestyle and anti-epigenetic lifestyle. Another, you keep taking growth hormone, it's going to be anti-epigenetics. Some medicine you take, it be good for you now, but epigenetically, they are actually trying to interfere with your epigenetic process. The human body is built not like a car. A car, it just deteriorates, then it finished. But the human body can get better, can get better through time, self healing. So you got to not to interfere with the self healing process. In other words, I also invent this term, DNA intelligence. In other words, there's lots of intelligent DNA we don't understand. We need to document those things. We got to have a complete automated software foundation. We need to start to do this. Okay, we need to reason things out in completeness, not partial reason. Okay, some drug good for you for now. All this kind of things. Not all these experimentalists. They use mouse as mice as a subject. They cannot do it now and just kill the mice. No, we need to see what happens afterwards, not just right away. Okay, you did something good for the mice. You need to show us what's going to happen afterward for as long as possible. Okay, all these things need some logic. Okay, there's
Yes.
really, I think
Yes.
life science need to go into
Yes, thank you.
philosophy and logic.
Thank
Okay.
you. Thank you, Dr. Chin. We have our honorable speaker, Professor Dr. Talib. So we are discussing on longevity. So what you want to share about this longevity topic?
I'm just trying to follow up what Professor Shang has been saying. I think what he's saying is very interesting. But I want to talk also again from a developing world perspective, not from an American perspective. In the developing world, we don't think about longevity. We think about surviving from day to day, because life is tough anyhow. Now, Professor Shang has been talking about the American experience, especially. He's especially in California. I sympathize with that a lot, but I must say that not the whole world thinks that way. Fortunately, Professor Sharif. I'm a 73 years old man now. Only 2.5% of the population are above 65 years of age in Jordan. Most of the people are young. They live young, they die young, because they try to resist occupation. They try to live their lives. So I just wanted to add this thing. Thank you so much, Sharif. It's a very interesting discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor. Mr. Oleg, can you hear me? You want to share some views about longevity? Okay, I want to go for the concluding remarks for today's discussion. Mr. Marshall, what's your concluding remarks for today's session?
Well, thank you, Sharif. This has been a very excellent presentation today. And I want to echo what Professor Rafai has talked about. Talib brought up an issue, the difference between the developed world and the developing world. And obviously, we know that the World Talent Economy Forum is focused predominantly not so much on the developed world, although we take from there, but and would like to transmit a lot of the information and knowledge and well-being from the developed world into the developing world. But as the professor said, the developing world is more focused on day-to-day survival. There's wars, there's tragedies, there's disease. In Nigeria alone, for an American to go to Nigeria, one would have to get 22 vaccines just to enter if they want to protect themselves. That's a lot of vaccines in one shot.
Yeah.
And then you'd have to wait 30 days to get in. So I think that speaks to the type of what's happening in the developing world, and that it is incumbent upon us as human beings to reach out to people in the developing world to help them equalize what's happened in the developed world, create better quality lifestyle, create longevity, create an ethic of value of life, and not to say it doesn't, but what there's ancient religions throughout India and throughout other parts of the developing world that have always valued life. But I think what we need to do is we need to be realistic that as the populations grow, the environment becomes under pressure. It becomes under pressure to take on food sustainability, food security, air quality, water quality, and things of that nature. I know that our team is focused on those specific issues, and they do impact longevity. So I think that what Professor Rafai, what Talib said is really important. We need to take that under advisement. And I do agree with him that based in the United States, a lot of us here in the United States take for granted, I think, too much of what the developing world does not take for granted. And that is some sense of food security and air quality. Although I got to tell you, here in the United States, air quality isn't that great. So I think we need to focus on the developing world. And when we do that, the developed world will benefit from it. It'll come out as an opportunity to create more jobs and more economic capability for people around the world. And there's an old expression, I'm a sailor, so there's an old expression, as the tide rises, all ships rise with the tide. So that's the same thing with the developed world. All ships will rise with the tide. All countries will rise with the tide if we improve quality of life and we improve longevity. And again, we've touched upon many aspects of it, but I think that this has been a great session, Sharif, and thank you for having this session.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Marsabin.
Yeah, there was one of the points that was brought up earlier, which I think is extremely important, is the idea that one of the things we're seeing amongst people, both in the developing world and in the developed world, is that people have lost a sense of purpose largely. And although the overall world here and on the developing side of the planet has more wealth and more opportunity to have things that we're not facing the levels of starvation deprivation that we see in many parts of the world. But there is within the culture a great number of people who are suffering in a very similar way to what we see happening in the developing world. So the inequality exists not only between the two aspects of the global community, but even within the developing world, we are seeing that. And one of the things that I think is of crucial importance, that obviously, as Professor Talib said, you know, the idea of the survival of people, if that's what you're concerned about, if you're concerned simply about being able to live through the violence or live through the hunger of starvation, you're not thinking about longevity. You're thinking about, how do I get to my next, you know, the next hour, the next day, the next week. But one of the things that I think is really of benefit to what is happening here in the World Talent Economy Forum is that there is a movement to try to bring together the education of the people who are participating in this to actually find purpose for what they're doing and participating in the world. So whether we're talking about the various things that the Professor Ching is talking about, or what Marshall is talking about in terms of being able to offer solutions into the world, these are things that provide a sense of purpose. And almost as important as longevity is for each of us, having a purpose, we're certainly seeing that in the spirit amongst the people who are fighting against the Russians in Ukraine, where the determination to defend their country is so strong that they're willing to give their lives up for a cause like that. These are the types of motivations that we're actually trying to encourage in a more positive way. Clearly, we don't want to be able to have to do this because we're fighting wars. We want it, but we are, in a certain sense, we are fighting against this great battle, the battle of climate change that is affecting the world and affecting the potential for the survival of the world. So if we want to talk about the things that David was talking about, the potential of living to 150 years, we're not going to be able to do that if we don't have a planet on which to live. So these things are of crucial importance, and I think that everyone who is participating in this, in viewing the World Talent Economy Forum, has the idea of being able to find a purpose for themselves to actually participate in the improvement and the solutions that are so necessary for us to be able to make an issue like longevity something that becomes top of mind rather than something that we can only hope to achieve.
Thank you, Mr. Marsabin. Professor David Smith, what's your concluding remarks?
I agree with what all the other speakers said. The world situation, real critical on where we're going. The quality of life around longevity is very important, and it's going to really vary a lot depending on where we live in the world, how we ourselves are active, how we monitor our diet. The global warming and the climate change is going to have effects, particularly as we see how it's affecting our food chain and others like that. And Mark was so right. If we look at the invasion of Ukraine by Russia, that has an impact, not just the directly kinetic parts of war, but the other things around war where they have increased the climate change in that area, how radioactive dust has been released, and people have gotten sick of radiation sickness from that. The positive things to me is we are understanding the genetic basis of aging and longevity so much better. There was a study earlier this year that 2,000 new geno keys have been identified that affect longevity. Now, do we understand what these 2,000 geno keys do today yet? No, not all of them. But we begin to understand that they play a role in longevity. Also, though, we understand in many different ways that there are habit changes we can make that will help us with longevity. We need to avoid being obese, to avoid overeating, and that will affect it. We can eat food that is richer in different proteins, antioxidants, and things. One of the things that many of the longevity experts say is, for example, eat more nuts is one of the things to help us. Try out different herbs, eat plenty of healthy plant foods, stay physically active. Elements like smoking, we realize that smoking has an impact to us, and that if you smoke, you're decreasing your life expectancy by at least 10 years or more going forward. As Dr. Chi has says, you have to prioritize your happiness and your involvement. If you become uh, very depressed, you're not going to live as long. If you do not get out with others, you're not going to. Chronic stress, chronic anxiety are very things that are helping us. The lack of sleep is another area where it will affect longevity. And lastly, uh, we have seen time after time that what we do with others, how we interact, uh, keeping your mind active, keeping your body active, are all things that will help longevity. But it is, as I said before, it is a complex issue that you really have to work on to be there and understand it. Our environment is one that is very important. Uh, even the new studies out about intermediate fasting has shown to have an impact on longevity. So again, it's a multitude of actions we can take, and with those actions, we hopefully will see the longevity of everyone on the earth begin to increase. So thank you, Sharif.
Thank you. Professor Ching, what's your concluding remarks today?
Okay. Well, I appreciate that Professor Taleb Rita has this Rifa. I hope I spelled correct. Has started a new
Right.
topic for
You're right.
this discussion. His topic is the next new world, also culture level quotient. What we want to do is to establish the next highest culture level quotient in the next new world. Okay, what this amount to is this. Today I will be meeting Patrick Freeman. He's for freedom to choose your own country. Okay, so he's a bit ahead of his grandfather, Milton Freeman. You see, and you see what I'm thinking. I would start with that the United States today is the new world. Okay, after French Revolution, they want to create a government without government. Okay, without kings. In other words, so they use United States is the place. Okay, so this is you know the republicanism. Okay, which is based on John Locke's philosophy. Okay, so a government without actually small government. Okay, so what really amounts to is people have a choice of, all the people in the world have a choice of coming to USA. And this should be one of their goals. Last 3 years, I have helped 3 students coming over to the USA. Okay, so this give an opportunity. All you can expect are opportunities, not try to say you're going to get it. It's going to given to you free. You got to the United States set the example of a lot of people to migrate over here, and the U.S. has drained everybody's brain resource, you know, and for the betterment of this country, and we are seeing this happening. Right now, U.S. has to send some military equipment to Ukraine to fight Russia. Okay, so they have tremendous. This is the new world. USA is the new world. And the China also tried to rise up as new world. China's culture is 300 behind US. So it's in the age of reason. That is the most painful period in human history. Okay, so you need to sort of figured this out. China is advancing culture very fast, but China and the US, they are not going to be the new world in the future. Okay, they have been held down by a lot of things they believe today. Okay, for example, our company feel that we are all regulated by laws of nature, even in our behavior. Okay, the freedom we have come from radial tolerance of fuzzy logic. So basically, we are constrained, not freedom. Okay, so you see, this cause of freedom is seen in Sacramento. Okay, they are allowed to own machine guns. Okay, so that's freedom. Okay, you have freedom, but it's not like that. Okay, you can free to buy, free to invest, free to print money. But there are laws of nature in social science regulate us. We are not allowed to do this. Okay, U.S. cannot leave this. Therefore, U.S. is not going to be the next new world. The most likely next new world will be Australia. So I think the human race should get together to realize this. This thing from Patrick Freeman to if you think you want contribute to the next new world, make it the most advanced culture possible, so that we can go beyond. We can solve crisis. From what I have surveyed, human being cannot solve a single crisis, cannot solve environment crisis, cannot solve health crisis, cannot solve financial crisis, just no crisis we can solve, because we got stuck in the scientific world. Okay, this is the problem with Europe. Europe is got stuck in the scientific world, so it cannot get out of the scientific world. In Europe, you see that everybody experimentation, that's their god, you see. But in US, it's different. In the Google, they don't do any experiment. All the top 5 company, Google, Facebook, Microsoft, Apple, they just do what they do. They're not based on particular on science. They're doing fuzzy logic. Google is doing fuzzy search. So you got to let go of this science burden of science, which has benefited us, but it's not a burden. The U.S. has get out of the burden, but get trapped in this freedom. Freedom is, especially for social science. So we need to balance all this. And this guy, Patrick Freeman, I hope he will continue his grandfather's work and to lead the world to go into a path of through choice, path of choice. So basically, that's what the most likely next new world will probably be in southern hemisphere, because the northern hemisphere has already been occupied. This is our last chance, and the Sharif seem to pick Africa, and I would pick New Zealand, Australia. So basically,
Thank you.
It's
Thank
just
you,
a
Professor.
speculation. That part is just speculation.
Thank you, Professor Chin. Professor Talib, what's your concluding remarks for today?
I'm very sorry.
No
My
problem.
connection is not very good. This is not an equal world, after all, when it comes to technology. So if I get cut off, please forgive me.
No problem.
I listened very carefully to all what's been said, and I agree with most of it. Professor Chang, we are in the process of building a new world now, definitely, especially after the Ukraine war. I think the new world is in the making. I believe that this new world will define longevity in a different way, because longevity is not just about living more years. It's about the quality of life, as has been said by the 2 professors. Quality of life is very important here. In the developing world, the quality of life is not something you can brag about. And I wonder why you say that anybody can go to America. That's not true. It's very difficult to go to America. And that's not a solution. Solution is to distribute the wealth and the power of the world, not to go to one place to get the best. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you everyone for joining today's session. Today's session is very valuable for our audience, especially those who want to learn about longevity. We get different views from developed world and from developing world. Hopefully, it will help add some values for our research and development industry. Thank you. Tomorrow we have our special debate. We will do debate on autonomous vehicles. So I want to invite all of you to joining tomorrow's debate.
On what?
So
On what,
thank
Sharif? What's the
autonomous
topic?
vehicle.
Okay.
Autonomous vehicle. Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you. Your view is always valuable for us. Actually, all of our speakers' contribution is very, very important for us. Thank you. Bye bye and take care.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye. Bye, Professor Shank.
Thank you.
Bye.